Memento Mori, remember that you will die facing the final truth. What if you had only one day left to live? It's not a question meant to scare you, but one designed to awaken you. In the chaos of modern life, it's easy to forget the only certainty we all share: death. We postpone our dreams, suppress our emotions, and delay our gratitude for the moments that are slipping away with every breath. And yet, the ancient Stoics, those wise minds who walked the streets of Rome and Athens centuries ago, encouraged us to do the very opposite. They urged us not to ignore death, but to remember it. Not to fear it, but to let it shape how we live. This is the heart of a Stoic principle known as Memento Mori. Remember, you will die. At first glance, it might seem morbid or even depressing. Why dwell on something so grim? But Stoicism, as a philosophy, is anything but pessimistic. It doesn't ask us to obsess over the end. It asks us to use that end as a mirror, reflecting what truly matters. By remembering that our time is limited, we unlock the urgency to live with clarity, discipline, and purpose. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff. Below is the unknowable sea of death. You cannot fly, and you cannot avoid the fall. One day you will descend. But instead of panicking, the Stoic looks at the view, breathes in the air, and asks, "What will I do with the time I have left on this mountain?" This idea is echoed in the words of Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. It is not a threat, it is a reminder, a lens through which to focus our intentions. Memento Mori was not meant to paralyze, but to liberate. The fear of death often comes from not having lived fully. When we are clear about our values and live in accordance with them, death loses its power to terrify us. The Stoics believed that we should be so aligned with our inner compass, so aware of what we control and what we don't, that when death arrives, we are ready. Not because we are unafraid, but because we are complete. In today's world, we are bombarded by distractions, notifications, obligations, anxieties about the future. We become entangled in trivialities, postponing joy, love, and meaning for some hypothetical tomorrow. Memento Mori breaks through that fog. It reminds us that we are not promised another sunrise, and that at every day we wake up is a gift we must not waste. Think of all the people who have passed through this world: artists, kings, warriors, scholars. Think of Seneca, who wrote so eloquently about the shortness of life. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." We assume life is long. We assume there will be time later. But when we remember death, we stop waiting. We stop living as if we're immortal and start living as if every moment counts. Memento Mori is not just a phrase. It is a practice, a tool for transformation, a spiritual discipline. It whispers in our ears as we hesitate to say what we mean, to follow what calls us, or to let go of what burdens us. It doesn't say give up, it says wake up. So again, ask yourself, if today were your last day, how would you choose to spend it? Would you scroll aimlessly, argue over something petty, put off that dream one more time? Or would you forgive, create, connect, and embrace what is right in front of you? That's the true power of Memento Mori, not in fear, but in focus. Not in death, but in life. And if we can remember this simple truth daily, you will die. We might finally start to live. Origins of Memento Mori in Stoic thought. The phrase Memento Mori, Latin for remember that you will die, carries with it a weight that transcends time and culture. In the modern world, where we often distract ourselves from the reality of mortality, this phrase acts as a jarring yet enlightening reminder of the finite nature of life. But long before it became a popular motif on minimalist posters or tattoos, Memento Mori was a central concept deeply embedded in the teachings of Stoic philosophy. To the Stoics, the contemplation of death was not morbid. It was a necessary tool for clarity, courage, and wisdom. The roots of Memento Mori are intimately tied to the ancient Roman and Greek Stoic traditions. The Stoics believed that the awareness of death helped guide the wise person toward a life of virtue. Among them, three philosophers, Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, are the primary torchbearers of this reflection on mortality. Epictetus, born a slave and later a prominent Stoic teacher, often spoke of the impermanence of life and the necessity of preparing one's mind to face it. In his discourses, he urges his students to rehearse the possibility of loss and death daily, not out of fear, but as an exercise in detachment and focus. He taught that everything outside of our moral purpose is not truly under our control. Death, being inevitable, is not to be feared but accepted as part of nature's design. For Epictetus, remembering death meant focusing on one's duty as a rational and virtuous being. Seneca, the Roman statesman and playwright, viewed death as a companion that should walk beside us, not trail behind like a shadow. In his essay on the shortness of life, Seneca reminds us that life is long enough if we know how to use it. He believed that wasting time on trivial pursuits while ignoring the reality of death is one of the greatest misfortunes a person can face. In his letters to Lucilius, Seneca consistently reflects on mortality, urging the reader to live each day as if it were their last. To him, contemplating death was a daily practice to awaken purpose and gratitude. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most iconic of the Stoic emperors, integrated Memento Mori into his personal writings and meditations. As a Roman emperor, he witnessed war, plague, and betrayal. His reign was anything but peaceful. Yet he maintained a deeply introspective practice of reminding himself of death. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." For Marcus, the reminder of mortality was a way to strip away illusions, pride, and distraction. It helped him focus on the present, perform his duties with integrity, and maintain a calm mind amid chaos. The Stoics did not promote a fixation on death to inspire dread. Rather, they saw it as the ultimate mirror through which to evaluate life. In remembering that death awaits, we are reminded of how fleeting our concerns often are, how much energy we spend on things that do not matter, and how often we live as if we will never die. Memento Mori was not a slogan for them. It was a way of life, a lens through which every decision and action was refracted. This contemplation also served as a moral equalizer. In a world of hierarchy, wealth, and ambition, the certainty of death reminded the Stoics that no one escapes the same end. Rich or poor, powerful or weak, death comes for all. This insight helped to dissolve arrogance and promote humility, compassion, and brotherhood among humans. In essence, the origin of Memento Mori in Stoic thought is not rooted in darkness, but in light. It is an invitation to live wisely, to stay grounded, and to appreciate each moment for what it is: fragile, fleeting, and precious. By remembering our end, we are better prepared to live our middle with meaning. Memento Mori as a guide to living. In a world obsessed with productivity, image, and permanence, it may seem counterintuitive, morbid even, to reflect on death every day. Yet this is exactly what the ancient Stoics advised. Memento Mori, the Latin phrase meaning "remember you will die," is not an invitation to despair, but a call to live more fully. Rather than fearing death, the Stoics embraced it as a vital teacher, one that brings clarity, urgency, and purpose to life. When understood through the lens of Stoicism, Memento Mori becomes a powerful guide to living wisely, intentionally, and meaningfully. At the core of Stoic philosophy lies the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. Death undoubtedly belongs to the latter category. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." By acknowledging the inevitability of death, we begin to treat time as a sacred, finite resource rather than an endless well. Memento Mori urges us to use this limited time wisely, not to rush through life, but to live it with attention and care. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome, reminded himself in his meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This is not a statement of fear, but of freedom. If death could come at any moment, then the present moment becomes precious. What grievances are worth holding on to? What conversations are worth avoiding? What dreams are worth postponing? The presence of death reframes our decisions, stripping away superficial concerns and returning us to what matters most: virtue, love, and the present. Memento Mori also teaches us humility. No matter how powerful, wealthy, or talented we are all moving toward the same end. Epictetus reminded his students not to be arrogant or consumed by status, for everything we own or achieve is temporary. When we embrace the reality of our mortality, we stop placing our worth in things that fade. We focus instead on building character and developing wisdom, the only wealth that death cannot take. One of the most liberating aspects of Memento Mori is how it helps us confront fear. Many of our anxieties are rooted in the illusion that life is guaranteed. We fear change, loss, and uncertainty because we expect permanence. But when we acknowledge the truth that life is fleeting, we become more courageous. We learn to act without delay, to speak our truth, to forgive quickly, and to pursue our passions without waiting for the perfect time. This mindset also enhances gratitude. Knowing that our days are numbered makes ordinary moments feel extraordinary. A shared meal, a quiet sunrise, a kind word, all gain depth when we understand they are not guaranteed. Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life, not to live in fear, but so that every day might be lived as if it were our last, with sincerity, depth, and appreciation." In practice, Memento Mori doesn't require dramatic changes. A simple daily reflection, asking yourself in the morning or evening, "What if today were my last?" can create powerful shifts. It forces you to examine your relationships, your goals, your values. Are you spending your time on what truly matters? Are you speaking kindly, acting justly, and living authentically? The Stoics didn't want us to obsess over death. They wanted us to remember it just enough so that we wouldn't waste life. Memento Mori is not about gloom, it's about urgency. It is not about sorrow, it's about focus. It is not about giving up, it's about showing up, fully awake to the miracle of being alive, even if just for a short while. In a distracted, fast-paced world, Memento Mori cuts through the noise. It reminds us that time is not a resource to be hoarded or feared, but a gift to be cherished. When we live with death in mind, we don't become dark or detached, we become free. We stop chasing illusions and start embracing life exactly as it is. That, in the Stoic view, is true wisdom. Psychological benefits of reflecting on mortality. To most people, the thought of death brings discomfort, fear, or avoidance. We often push the concept away, hoping that ignoring it might soften its inevitability. But in Stoic philosophy, reflecting on death, known as memento mori, is not a grim obsession. Instead, it is a powerful psychological tool for transformation. By contemplating our own mortality regularly, we sharpen our awareness, deepen our sense of meaning, and free ourselves from many of the invisible anxieties that burden our lives. The first psychological benefit of reflecting on mortality is clarity. In a world filled with noise, distraction, and competing priorities, we often forget what truly matters. But when we remember that our time is finite, it becomes easier to cut through the trivial. Suddenly, the petty arguments, the desire for status, and the fear of missing out lose their power. We begin to ask ourselves more meaningful questions. What kind of life am I living? Am I using my time wisely? This clarity doesn't make life easier, but it makes it more intentional. And with intention comes peace. Secondly, contemplating death enhances gratitude. Each day is no longer a given, it becomes a gift. When we are truly aware that today could be our last, even the smallest moments gain significance. The taste of coffee in the morning, a kind word from a friend, the sound of rain. This awareness cultivates mindfulness, pulling us out of autopilot and into the richness of the present. Gratitude becomes natural, not forced, because we realize how precious and temporary everything truly is. A third benefit is resilience. Many of our fears and anxieties stem from a desperate attempt to control life and avoid pain. But death is the great reminder that control is an illusion. As Epictetus taught, the only true power we have is over our judgments and actions, not external events. When we reflect on death, we begin to accept uncertainty and impermanence as part of the human experience. This acceptance breeds inner strength. We become less reactive, less attached to outcomes, and more grounded in what we can actually influence. Moreover, reflecting on mortality reduces the fear of death itself. Paradoxically, the more we avoid thinking about death, the more it terrifies us. But when we face it directly, when we meditate on it, write about it, speak about it, it becomes familiar. And like anything we become familiar with, it loses some of its power to frighten us. The Stoics didn't see death as an enemy, but as a natural part of life, a companion on the journey. To fear death, Seneca said, is to fear the very thing that makes life meaningful. Another deep benefit is the liberation from social comparison. Much of our modern anxiety comes from trying to measure up on social media, in our careers, even in our private lives. But death levels all. Kings and beggars, billionaires and monks, all meet the same fate. When we hold that truth close, the pressure to compete begins to dissolve. We become more focused on being rather than impressing, more authentic, less performative. This shift can bring an enormous sense of relief and psychological freedom. Finally, reflecting on death motivates action. Knowing that life is short and unpredictable encourages us to take risks that align with our values. We stop postponing our dreams. We express love while we still can. We forgive more easily, realizing that grudges waste time we don't have. In short, we live with urgency, not panic, with purpose, not pressure. In conclusion, contemplating mortality is not a morbid practice. It is one of the most psychologically liberating habits we can cultivate. It clears the mind, softens the heart, strengthens the spirit, and awakens the soul. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This is not about death. It's about how to truly live. Death as a teacher through Memento Mori. In the Stoic tradition, death is not an end to be feared, but a teacher to be embraced. The phrase Memento Mori, which means remember you will die, is not a grim warning. It is a call to live fully, wisely, and urgently. For the Stoics, contemplating death was not morbid, it was essential. Death served as a mirror, reflecting back to us the nature of life itself. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This stark reminder was not designed to terrify, but to awaken. The inevitability of death sharpens our awareness of life. It calls us to focus on what truly matters and to waste no time on trivialities. The knowledge that life can end at any moment should not cause anxiety, it should bring clarity. Epictetus, once a slave and later a respected Stoic teacher, echoed this sentiment. He taught that we must rehearse our mortality daily, not with fear, but with readiness. For him, remembering death helped one detach from things outside of our control and focus on internal mastery. In the discourses, he said, "Keep before your eyes every day death and exile, and you will never have any mean thought." Death, then, was a compass. It helped steer the soul away from pettiness and toward virtue. Seneca, the Roman statesman and Stoic writer, also saw death as the ultimate equalizer. Wealth, fame, and power cannot prevent it. Death humbles all of us, making kings and beggars alike. In his essay on the shortness of life, Seneca writes that life is long enough if we live it wisely, but he warns that most people squander it as if they have an infinite supply of days. Reflecting on mortality, he argued, is the cure for this carelessness. It reminds us to use our time with intention, to live as if every moment matters, because it does. Memento Mori forces us to prioritize. When you remember that time is finite, you stop arguing over petty issues. You stop postponing dreams. You speak more honestly, love more openly, and let go more easily. Death reminds us that the past cannot be changed and the future is uncertain. The only place we can act is in the present. And when we live with this truth, each breath becomes a gift. Death also teaches humility. The Stoics believed that much of our suffering comes from attachment and ego, believing that we deserve certain outcomes or that the world revolves around our desires. But death has no favorites. It strikes the proud and the humble alike. Recognizing this softens our arrogance. It allows us to treat others with more compassion and ourselves with more patience. More importantly, Memento Mori shifts how we define success. If death is certain, then chasing fame, fortune, and external validation becomes less appealing. What matters instead is virtue, living with courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance. These are the only things that death cannot take from us. As Epictetus put it, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In the face of death, all that remains is who you've become, not what you've acquired. We often live as if we're immortal. We delay apologies, withhold forgiveness, and ignore our better instincts. But death is the ultimate accountability partner. It whispers, there is no someday, only today. And with that whisper comes power, the power to act now, to love now, to be grateful now. In a world full of distractions, Memento Mori brings us back to the center. It quiets the noise and reminds us that we are here for only a short time. What we do with that time is up to us. We can live in fear of the end, or we can let the end shape how we live. The Stoics chose the latter. So let death be your teacher, not in sorrow, but in truth. Let it guide your choices, sharpen your focus, and deepen your appreciation for what is. Not to scare you into submission, but to awaken you to life's urgency and beauty. Remember, you will die, and in that remembrance, you will learn how to live. daily practices to internalize Memento Mori. The idea of Memento Mori, remember you must die, can sound grim at first glance, but when viewed through the lens of Stoicism, it becomes one of the most empowering and transformative tools available to us. Rather than causing fear, it inspires urgency. Rather than inducing despair, it offers clarity. But how do we go beyond simply knowing this idea to actually living it? To truly internalize Memento Mori, it must be practiced. Just as the Stoics train their minds like athletes train their bodies, we too can incorporate small, intentional rituals that help us keep mortality in focus, not to be haunted by it, but to be awakened by it. One morning reflection. Begin with the end in mind. Start your day by asking a single sobering question. If today were my last, how would I live? This is not about dramatizing life, but about orienting your actions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This statement isn't meant to paralyze you with fear, but to strip away distractions, excuses, and pettiness. When you begin each morning with this mindset, your priorities rearrange themselves naturally. You stop wasting energy on grudges, trivial complaints, or vanity. You start cherishing time, choosing wisely, and acting with presence. 2. Evening review. Rehearse death to sharpen life. The Stoics were known for their practice of evening reflection. Seneca encouraged daily reviews of one's actions and thoughts. To make this even more powerful, pair it with Memento Mori. Ask yourself, did I live today as if it mattered? If today had been my last, what would I change? This isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. The aim is not perfection, but growth. When practiced regularly, this evening ritual becomes a mirror, helping you align more closely with your values and let go of distractions that don't serve you. 3. Visual reminders, symbols of mortality. In ancient times, Roman generals had servants whisper in their ears during parades, "You are only a man, you will die." Today, we can't all have philosophical reminders following us around, but we can use small symbols, objects, images, or even apps to bring mortality to mind. Common symbols include a skull on a desk, a black ring inscribed with Memento Mori, wallpaper on your phone that reads, "You will die someday. Live accordingly." Far from morbid, these are anchors, quiet, visual reminders that time is fleeting and precious. They nudge us out of automatic behavior and back into the awareness of life. 4. Read the wisdom of the dead. One of the most powerful ways to remember death is to learn from those who have already faced it. The works of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and even non-Stoics like Montaigne or Buddhist monks are imbued with reflections on death. By reading their words, you begin to absorb their calm, their strength, and their clarity in the face of impermanence. Reading a few pages of meditations before bed or journaling about a quote from Letters to Lucilius can reset your entire emotional framework. You're reminded not only that death is certain, but that it is nothing to fear if you've lived well. 5. Speak of death. Openly modern society avoids conversations about death. It's treated as taboo or something to be hidden behind euphemisms. But Stoicism encourages the opposite, to name it, to face it, and to integrate it. Talking openly with friends or family about mortality can bring people closer. It shifts conversations from surface-level distractions to what really matters. It allows us to process the emotions tied to impermanence and to deepen our compassion and urgency. 6. Practice letting go. Every time you release your grip on control, whether it's over outcomes, possessions, or expectations, you are practicing a form of death. Letting go prepares you for the ultimate letting go. Recognizing that everything is temporary, your youth, your achievements, even your relationships, creates space for profound gratitude and clarity. Final thought. To practice Memento Mori daily is not to obsess over death, but to fall in love with life. It's to say, because I will die, I will live differently, fully, honestly, and urgently. This is the Stoic way, and when done sincerely, it leads not to fear, but to freedom. Embracing death to truly live. To remember that we will die is not to shudder in fear, but to awaken. Memento Mori is not a dark cloud hanging over our lives, but a beam of clarity that pierces through the fog of distraction, pride, and illusion. It reminds us that time is not promised, that life is not an infinite reservoir, and that every moment we waste is one we never get back. When the Stoics told us to remember death, they weren't trying to scare us. They were inviting us to wake up. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor burdened with the weight of the world, still paused to write to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." He wasn't speaking as a king to his people. He was speaking as a human to himself, a man who knew that power, luxury, and glory meant nothing if life was not lived intentionally. Seneca reminded us that it's not that life is too short, but that we waste so much of it. He wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough if you know how to use it." What steals our life is not death, but distraction, delay, and the false belief that we'll always have more time. And Epictetus, once a slave, taught that death itself is not frightening. It is simply a part of nature. What is frightening is to reach the end of your life and realize you never truly lived, never truly chose your thoughts, your values, your path. Memento Mori is a mirror. It reflects back to us the truth that we often run from. We are temporary. And in that terrifying truth lies something beautiful, freedom. If you're going to die, then why not live as if it matters? Why not forgive faster, love deeper, act bolder, and speak truthfully? Why not put down the petty arguments, the empty ambitions, and the worries about what others think? There is profound liberation in knowing this. You do not have forever. That means the only time to be kind is now. The only time to create is now. The only time to be honest, to be brave, to be yourself is now. When we embrace Memento Mori, we stop living on autopilot. We begin to live with intention. We recognize that every day is a gift, not a guarantee. Every conversation could be our last. Every sunrise we witness might be the final one. And instead of drowning in fear, we rise in gratitude. We look at life not as a place to accumulate, dominate, or control, but as a fleeting moment to participate in. We stop measuring our days in money, likes, and trophies, and start measuring them in presence, purpose, and peace. So ask yourself right now, if this were your final day, would you be proud of how you lived it? Would you be proud of how you spoke to your loved ones? How you spent your energy, what you gave your attention to? Death is the great leveler, but it is also the great revealer. It strips away what doesn't matter and leaves only what does. That is why Memento Mori is not a philosophy of fear. It is a philosophy of freedom. To remember that you will die is to remember what it means to be alive. Let this not be a reason to despair, but a reason to rejoice. You are here. You are breathing. You have today, and perhaps that is enough. So go, live, fully, bravely, kindly, as if it matters, because it does, and remember, Memento Mori, not to mourn, but to awaken.